Happy Wednesday. Back with some practice. I'm going to go to the studio again tomorrow night, and I've made some progress with my opener for the next the new album. Thank you. And I've scribbled down a few ideas for things like little shout choruses and sort of backgrounds stuff that I'm going to do with the song. So it's going to be a good opener. It's going to be sort of a funk tune with kind of a Latin pattern. Sorry, I do not speak en français, but I pretty much Chevrolet coupe, but I just hang out playing trombone. Actually, the interesting thing, I do know that in French, the word for a paperclip is a trombone because of the resemblance of this instrument to a paperclip. So I do know that word, but I don't speak French at all. I speak a little Spanish. That's the closest I get, just across the border. But anyway, I'm just doing some warm-up routine. Oh, the other interesting thing, I went to a trombone clinic once by Jacques Mauger, who I think is a trombone professor at the Paris Conservatoire. And he was, one of the things that he mentioned was that he feels that the sort of characteristic sound of French trombonists is conditioned by the speech pattern of the French language. In particular, that a lot of French is sort of, how you say, it's sort of the front of the mouth up here. And that results in kind of a brighter sound than a German or a British trombonist or an American trombonist, because we kind of speak more from the back of the mouth. So the way we speak influences the way we play the instrument. And I had never really heard anyone mention that before, but it was a really interesting idea, and it certainly makes sense in light of the way that different nationalities of brass players sound. There are distinct national sounds among brass instrument groups, players, and it's really interesting to consider that it might be closely related to the languages that they speak. Yeah, I started playing trombone when I was in school. It was fifth grade, actually. That's when I started. And the interesting thing is that I still have, I don't always use it, but I still have the same mouthpiece that I started on as fifth grader. And I still even have the horn that I had. It's in the closet behind me. It was an old Con 14H, a little 500. Yeah, fifth grade. That was a long time ago, but I remember. And not long after I started, um, I went to Symphony Hall in Boston for the first time ever to go to a Boston Symphony concert. And my dad struck up a conversation with the woman sitting next to us, and it turned out her husband was the principal trombone in the Boston Symphony. So after the concert, she introduced us to him. So I had a chance to meet Bill Gibson, who was the principal trombone in the Boston Symphony for many years. That was in around 1974, I think. Yeah, it would have been maybe the fall of '73 or the spring of '74. And yeah, I was a shy kid, but Gibson asked me, can you reach the sixth position? And I said, well, just barely, because I had just started that fall, and my arms were not very long. Uh, to this day, seventh position is a little bit of a stretch for me. So, um, yeah. So that's one of the reasons. That's not why I use the trigger, but I have this valve that allows me to do that. This horn, by the way, is a Bach 36B. It's a 525 bore, what we call a medium bore trombone, in between where a small bore is like 0.508 or 500 bore, and a big, large bore tenor is a 547 bore. This is in between, it's 525. So it's kind of a good all-around horn. I can play high notes and I can play low notes, and I can play jazz, and I can play classical music on it. I have used it in first chair work. I played a couple of Shostakovich symphonies um, with an orchestra I used to play with, and Shostakovich requires you to play really loud and bright. So so uh, I was using my Edwards, which is a big 547 horn, and it wasn't really punching through enough. So I decided to go to this Bach 36, which makes a much brighter sound, and I can sort of cut through the sound of the orchestra with this more easily than I could on the Edwards. Anyway, so back to some my practice routine, which is kind of boring. And I just warm up and basically calisthenics that I use to try and produce tone. that's one of the standard Emery Remington warm-up. I think the book is just called Warm-Up Exercises by Emery Remington. Remington was the trombone professor at the Eastman School of Music for many years, and he produced a lot of the best trombone players in symphony orchestras in the U.S. over the last 50 years or so, including my teacher, who was Tom Everett. Tom Everett was the band director at Harvard for many years. Also, a good friend of mine, Roger Hecht, is an old Remington student. Both a couple of important friends of mine, both Remington students. But the warm-up exercises are pretty much widely used by all sorts of players all over the place, and they're good for really just getting tone production going, and just getting you loosened up to play for a gig or a rehearsal or whatever you're doing. Here's another one. That's another Emery Remington warm-up study. It's almost dinner time, so I think I'll wrap it up. But let me, before I go, I'll play Urb's theme for you, since it's my theme and it's on my album Urb's Eye View on Bandcamp. So if you want to check out what I do with my electronic gear, Urb's Eye View is an album I put out earlier this year, and it's solo, just me, but a lot of the tunes have a whole bunch of sound on them, which I make with electronics to process the sound of my horn and some beatboxing and stuff like that. So I had a lot of fun producing the album, and I'm working on another one. So if you like it, stay tuned, because there's more on the way. Anyway, here's Urb's theme. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to have some viewers this evening. Take care. I will see you later in the week. Happy Wednesday.